everybody, welcome to Garden Time with Belle. I am out here in front of the greenhouse, but really we're going to be working in two areas today. We're going to be going into my raised bed garden and up into my wildflower habitat because I'm going to be harvesting a bunch of the flowers that I grew from seed this year. My inspiration for starting to grow cut flowers really, I think, got peaked years ago when I watched Erin from Floret farm. They produced a beautiful, I guess, series about her farm out in Washington State. And if you don't know much about Floret farm, I'll put a link in the description below. But she's a flower farmer, and wow, I learned so much about number one, dahlias, which you all know I love, but all the things that go into creating beautiful flowers for the market, for the commercial market. And I learned a lot from other flower farmers that I followed about how to take care of your cut flowers, which cut flowers have the longest vase life. So even though those gardeners, those farmers are cutting and producing flowers on a grand scale, I'm just a little home gardener, I can still learn a lot from them. So I encourage you, if you're interested in getting into cut flowers, I'll see if I can put a list in the description on some of those folks that I followed that have really taught me an awful lot about how to grow some beautiful flowers from seed. So before I share with you all what supplies I need for this simple task, and tell you which flowers I'm going to be harvesting today, I'm going to ask everybody to please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Those of you that are subscribers, thank you so much for supporting my little channel. And those that haven't, I hope you'll click that like and subscribe button so that you can see when I post new content about what I'm doing in my mid-Missouri Zone 6 garden. I'm only going to need three things for this project. Some good pruners. You know I love my Felco 310s. These are my little snips. And a bucket to put the cut flowers in, and of course some water. Let me tell you a little bit about these buckets. I went to my local grocery store, actually, that has a floral department, and I just walked up to the floral department and I said, you know, do you all have any of those black floral buckets that you get in when you get shipments of flowers delivered to your store? And she said, yeah. And I said, what do you do with those? Do you just throw them away or recycle them, or do you keep them? She says, we recycle them. I said, would you be willing to give me some? She said, absolutely, we have a ton. So I scored, I think she gave me about 8 of these buckets, and I use them for all kinds of things in the garden. But in particular, these buckets are really useful for putting in cut flowers because they're rather tall, and so your stems, your flowers won't fall out or fall over. So anyhow, I would encourage you to get some freebies. So go to your local florist or your flower department in a grocery store or a big box store and see if they will give you some freebies like they did me. So the first stop on our flower harvest this morning is this beautiful gomphrena, and this is the carmine variety. I grew all of these from seed. I started them from seed in my greenhouse, and then I planted these out as well as most of the other ones I'm going to show you the first week of May, because our last frost is towards the end of April. So I typically like to make sure you plant these warm weather flowers after all threats of frost are past. So that's what we're going to do. You can see it's pretty lush and full, and actually I've let these go a little bit too long in waiting to harvest them, but I was doing that on purpose because I'm having that garden party tomorrow, and so I wanted to get as many flowers as I could. So anyhow, well, I'll have you come in and let me show you where you want to cut your flowers, and you've seen me do this an awful lot. So if we take, I'm trying to find a good one that you can see the whole flowers from the bottom to the top. You want to go down, 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 just like usual. And when you find stems on either side, you want to cut right above that stem. All right. What that'll do, number one, is give you a nice long stem for your vase, but also then now it's going to stimulate this where I cut to send up more and more stems and more flowers. So in terms of gomphrena, they feel a little pokey, a little stiff. So you want to make sure they're relatively straight. That's going to let you know they're ready for harvest. The other thing that's really cool about gomphrena is actually I could cut a bunch of these and not put them in water at all and put them in a glass with no water and let them sit to dry or hang them upside down to dry. And apparently, I'm not done and I'm going to try it this year, but they make beautiful dried flowers and they hold their color. So that's the nice thing about gomphrena. So I'm just going to get after this little patch and I'll be tossing it down here in my bucket of water, and then we'll get on to the next flower. Okay, so I think I've got enough gomphrena, but before we move on to the next flower, I thought I might share a couple of tips with you all. So I mentioned when you harvest your gomphrena, in a perfect world, you would choose one that's got a nice stiff stem that's not floppy. That's really important. But also you want them to be almost fully open, and they have quite a long vase life. So let me show you the difference between a fully open one like this and this little one. And the stem on this one is a little floppy. The stem on this one is, you can even just feel it with your hands, it's much more firm. So we're going to let these little babies get tall and more stiff in their stems and fully form their buds so that when they go in the vase, they'll be beautiful. And let me just show you something real quick. I'll just cut this one and show you. You know, every once in a while, you know, you get one with some personality, and that can add some interest to your bouquet as well. So don't be concerned. But generally speaking, you want tall and straight stems. But as you can see, I've packed them in pretty thick here, so that might be part of the problem. So next up, if you just want to swing around here, we're going to be harvesting ageratum. And of course, like I mentioned, I grew all of these from seed as well. So let me get in here and show you some details about this beautiful cut flower. So as I said, this is ageratum, and I think this is the blue mix. Honestly, I can't remember, but I grew these from seed, and I wanted to bring the camera in close so I can show you, again, when's the best time to harvest. So truly, for the longest vase life, the best time to harvest these would be actually when they're not, this is too young, but do you see this one here? This is a better example. Do you see this flower head where they're not completely open? So if you look at that, they will continue to open inside in your vase. And then if you look at these, which I'm going to go ahead and cut because I'm going to be using them in my flower arrangements for tomorrow's party. These are fully open. Do you see the difference there? So you can see the dark center and a little fringe, and then here you can really see they're wide open. And then of course you can see these are completely spent. So I wouldn't want to harvest those, or I could snip those off later. So as I mentioned, earlier, that I've left these in quite a long time. I should have been harvesting all along. Everything I'm showing you today, the gomphrena, the ageratum, and we're going to cut some celosia in just a minute, are what we call cut and come again flowers. The more that you cut them, the more they produce. So you really want to be harvesting your cut flowers on a regular basis. Typically, I would have cut them when they started blooming, probably every 10 days. I would come in and harvest and have fresh flowers all summer. All right, so I think that's all I need to mention. Same process, I'm going to go down the stem. I'll cut right above where two other side shoots come out, so they'll produce more flowers. So that's all there is to it. Okay, I'll get my bucket over here and get started. All right, so look at this. All this beautiful ageratum in purple and pinks, a little bit of pink, and whites. So I've got my bucket full. You'll see here on the ground, I've got all my refuse. You want to remove your stems, and I like to do it out in the field before I take them inside it. But when I get them inside, I'm going to really fine tune that. You want to remove the side leaves and the excess leaves. Number one, you don't want leaves under your water because that will ruin your water and it'll get yucky right away. But also, you want the water that you have in your vase to be taking care of these beautiful blooms and keeping them alive rather than all those leaves, trying to make sure they're hydrated. So last stop over here is our celosia flamingo feather. We're going to cut those, and then we're going to head up into the pollinator habitat, and I am going to get a bundle of wildflowers for the party. Okay, we've made it over here in this bed that I have the beautiful celosia in. This is such an interesting plant. I love its upright habit. Super cool, very easy to grow from seed. And you can't really appreciate its color because it's really kind of pale and creamy. When it first comes out, when it first bloomed early this summer, it was more pink. And you'd have to get in really close, maybe come in super close to one of those blooms, and you might see flecks of pink. Oh, here's a good example. Come in here. So do you see this little baby one? I mean, it's about done, but it's more pink on the tips. So anyways, I never grown this variety before, so this was a little bit surprising. But the reason why I chose this variety is right here, I have alpenglow zinnias that I'm growing. So I got a late start on my zinnia this year, so I won't be cutting zinnia today. But the alpenglow, and I'll put a picture on the screen for you, is a Floret farm seed. And it is gorgeous, sort of dusty, silvery, muted colors. And I thought the zinnias with this in an arrangement is a wonderful complement. But I'm going to go ahead and cut some of these today because I need to cut them. Same thing, nice, beautiful. If you want really tall stems for a tall vase, wow, this is the plant you should be growing. I mean, look at this stem. And again, you want to strip off the leaves so that that water goes up the stem and takes care of that beautiful flower. All right, so same process. Here I go. Well, I'd say that that was a pretty good harvest. So I've got my celosia in here now. So I think I'll set this bucket in front of the greenhouse, and then we're going to head up into the pollinator habitat and get some beautiful wildflowers. Oh my goodness, everybody, look at the beauty that we're experiencing here in early July in our 2 acres filled with things like this. This is a variety of coneflower or echinacea. We have several types of echinacea in this garden, but here's some that I'm going to be cutting today. We have this beautiful purple lilac colored monarda. Monarda is a big pollinator magnet, so I'm going to be cutting some of that. And then Rudbeckia or black-eyed Susan, we have quite a lot of it in the garden. So, you know, I'm not going to take a lot of time to look at which ones are prime. I'm going to just cut bundles and take it into the house and kind of sort through what's looking really fresh and pretty and what's kind of past its prime. But I mean, look at, I'm 5'6", and this variety of coneflower is up to my shoulder. I mean, and I'm sure there are some that are even taller. We have different layers. We have some coneflower. Actually, if you look right here, this is much, much shorter. This little patch in here. So we've got, again, lots of different varieties of, oh, beauty. Okay, so I guess I need to grab my pruners and my bucket off of my scooter, and I'm going to get after it. Bucket of water, some fresh water here, and got to grab my pruners. I might use my, instead of my snips, I think I'm going to use my Felco 6s, my bigger pruners, just in case. So, all right, it's time to get some beautiful wildflowers in this bucket. The other thing I wanted to mention is we haven't had a lot of measurable rain lately, so that might affect how these are looking. But you want some long stems for a tall vase? I mean, native wildflowers are for you. Oh my gosh, so wonderful. These are just going to make some outstanding. Ooh, I might need to cut them a little shorter, huh? They fit in my bucket, because I certainly don't need them as tall as I just cut them. So I was just excited about how tall they were, but maybe I don't need to cut them quite that. Maybe this is probably better. All right. We've invited our friends and neighborhood friends to come over and cut flowers anytime they want. We have a sweet little family that lives down the road here, and so they've not done it yet, but they asked if they could come, and we're delighted. So hopefully they'll bring their kiddos. And at my party tomorrow, I've invited all of my guests to bring their pruners and come out here and cut armloads of beautiful cut flowers to take home with them after the party. So, all right, so let's get in here and get some Monarda. And I probably shouldn't have exposed ankles, you know, getting in here, but I'm going to take the risk. I'll do a tick check later, as they say, because these are too pretty not to harvest. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, the Monarda is fragrant. I wasn't expecting that. Get those in the water. And honestly, everybody, I don't know the vase life of a lot of these wildflowers. I mean, I cut them myself, and I've noticed that, you know, 4 or 5 days pretty easily. But again, it depends on the maturity of the plant, how long they've been in bloom. But I get pretty decent vase life out of these. All right, so I've got some Monarda, I've got the coneflower, and now I'm going to get the black-eyed Susan or Rudbeckia, and this looks like a good little patch right here. Ooh, and these stems, they're really sticky, kind of pokey. So let's get in here. It's really hard for me to see where the stems are because we've got, you know, grasses and nature, but I'm just going to kind of wing it and just get my pruners in here and see what I can find. I'm sure I'll be cutting out some weeds that I can thin out later. Sorry, Bumble. Well, that's going to do it for today's garden project. Thank you all so much for coming along with me as we got to harvest some flowers in the raised bed garden, but also spend some time in this beautiful pollinator habitat. Couple of tips and tricks I wanted to share before we end. Number one, the best time to harvest your flowers is early in the morning. They're most hydrated, they've had a cool evening, so that's when you want to harvest your flowers. Secondly, and the bumbles are now waking up and they're coming back to the flowers that I've cut. Listen, you've got 2 acres of flowers. Anyways, early morning, which it's not early morning, but early morning, most of your pollinators are still snoozing and just waking up, and you don't disturb them as much. But anyhow, so those are some good reasons for cutting flowers early in the morning. So thanks everybody for hanging out with me today. I'm so excited to be able to use these for my party tomorrow. And I hope you found some inspiration, and I hope you'll consider growing some native pollinator attracting flowers in your garden. So until next time, happy gardening.